Hello, welcome everybody. I would like to thank our panelists for taking time out of their days to be on our Aerospace Engineering Career Exploration Night panel. This event is being recorded and will be made available to your ASU 101 instructors in a few days. In case you become closed out of the meeting, please log in again. We have panelists from 4:30 to 5:30, followed by a 3-minute break. Then we will switch out the panelists for our 5:30 to 6:30 panel. As the moderator, I will start with prepared questions directed to some or all of the panelists. Panelists, I'll use your name so you know the question is directed towards you. If you would like to pass on answering a question, please feel free to say pass, or if you have something to add or agree. Students, your attendance is being recorded based on your registration information and the length in the meeting. The attendance list will be given to your ASU 101 instructor. Use the Q&A box on the black Zoom bar to type career-related questions for our panelists. You can make up questions or use the questions from your workbook. If the question is directed to specific panelists, please include their name in your question. Feel free to type your questions now. Our Q&A moderator will read your question shortly. Panelists, please take yourself off mute, but remain off video. Let's begin. The first question is for all of the panelists. To help the undergraduate first-year student audience that we have know a little bit more about you and formulate the questions for you, please give us your 1-minute to 2-minute professional tell me about yourself pitch, including how your formal education is used in your current or previous roles. Let's start with Myra.
Jared, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, great. So my name is Myra. I graduated from the University of Arizona with an aerospace engineering degree. But while there, I did take some systems and electrical engineering courses. So I used a lot of my courses in my current job as a systems engineer, designing requirements for engines. And I use a lot of the aerospace engineering knowledge as well in terms of propulsion systems, just in being able to understand how the engine needs to function. And I've worked in the past in flight controls and engine controls, so I can answer any questions about avionics or engines.
Awesome, thank you so much. Melissa?
All right, hi everybody. My name's Melissa. I work for Honeywell Aerospace. I've been there almost 10 years. I graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering from Arizona State in 2011. And I've been with Honeywell ever since then. And let's see, I have, like I said, been with Honeywell for 10 years. I started on a rotation program, did some stints in structures and engine test, then did a couple years in structures, and then have pretty much been a project engineer ever since very early in my career, bounced around a bunch of different engines and engine types. And it's super fun. I love it every day. It's different and fun and new. As far as what have I used from my schooling, so I spent a couple years in structures, so I used all of my equations and knowledge I learned from school. But ever since then, being a project engineer, you have to kind of be a jack, at least for me, I've become kind of a jack of all trades. I know a little bit about everything. And so a lot of my skills are my soft skills, learning to work in teams, good communication, good writing skills, those types of things. So those are definitely good things to pick up working in your team projects, and definitely helped me in my career.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Larry?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. Larry Davidoff. I'm an Arizona State graduate, 30 plus years in aerospace and defense. I am a mechanical degree, as it shows there. I did also pursue an MBA shortly after leaving ASU early in my career. I've had the fortunate opportunity to work some very exciting programs in my career. I've worked on the space shuttle. I've worked with Hubble telescope. I've worked on launch vehicles for human space flight as well as satellites. I've worked on GPS satellite technology that we all use, ubiquitous in our lives today, and also aircraft. I've developed broad expertise, I think, as Melissa said, having been a system engineer, a project engineer, and just across the breadth of technologies I've worked over my career. I am current and relevant on technologies that are important to the world today, across a wide set. I have received awards from NASA, the U.S. Space Force, and the International Industry Association. I just mentioned that in case there's just to show that your career, you get recognized in your career along the journey. You put in the hard work. I've used a lot. I got a mechanical degree. I only used that specifically for a year, developing products for aircraft. But out of the engineering education, I've applied the engineering product life cycle, everything from design through, disposal of a product, as well as just the general problem-solving skills and techniques you learn as an engineer. Those have been invaluable, as well as engineering economics, which you'll probably take the first couple of years, as everything comes down to dollars and cents, so no matter what role you're playing. I would like to add that I wasn't a natural-born engineer or a kid that had a passion for space or engineering or tinkering. I actually wanted to be an architect. ASU at the time had a dual architecture engineering degree. I found out I wasn't as interested in architecture as I thought, so I transitioned to engineering, not knowing really what my career would turn out to be. I did find that engineering prepared me for an exciting career I could have never imagined. So I look forward to sharing with the panel tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Braden.
Hi, everyone. I majored in aerospace engineering with a concentration in astronautics, and I graduated in 2018 from ASU. I'm working towards 3 years at Honeywell. I started as an intern, and I use a lot of what I learned at ASU every day. When I first started at Honeywell, I was more of an analyst, and I used MATLAB all the time. So pay attention in those classes and use it in your homework, even when you aren't required to, just because it's a really good tool to get good at. And then now that I'm in a lead systems engineering role, I use a lot from our space systems class that you take when you're a senior, which has to do with, learning about the different space systems. So for me, life support was very important, since I am now working on a carbon dioxide removal system for astronauts. And it's really important to, understand how not just your system works, but how all the other life support systems, the ECLIS, works together to, keep astronauts alive. And that class was definitely important in giving me a lot more background knowledge than some of my coworkers had. And then I also, you learn about requirements, the design cycle, working in a team, and as you do your capstone project, and that's super important. The other thing that came in handy was one of the classes. I don't remember the class number, but you take a class where you learn about work breakdown structures and scheduling and all patent knowledge and how to get a patent and stuff. And that all becomes in handy as well as you continue your career. So I recommend, actually trying very hard in that class and making sure you learn a lot. So that's another good one.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this other question is for all the panelists. Please tell us one piece of career advice or an observation that you really want to make sure that our students tonight who are freshmen, first year students who just are new to ASU, what kind of things do they really need to hear at this point? Let's start again with Myra.
I think the biggest
Thank
piece,
you.
did you say Myra or Larry?
Oh, sorry, Myra, please.
Okay, I think one of the most important pieces of career advice I can give is to really put yourself out there. I know when I was in school, I was very, very shy, and I was afraid of just really putting myself in outside of my comfort zone. But I've learned that the more you do that, the more you learn and the better experiences you have. So even if you think you're not quite ready for a research position or an internship, or you think you're not going to fit in a club, I just I would just recommend to just go for it. You never know what could happen. If you find something that you're afraid to try and you don't do it, I think it just kind of sets you back. So I would just tell you to just go for it, ask as many questions as you can, even if you think there might be not super intelligent questions, because I guarantee you someone in your class will be happy you ask a question. So just put yourself out there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Melissa, please.
All right, so I'll echo something that Myra said. Ask lots of questions. I was someone in class who I sat in the front and I raised my hand all the time, asked lots of questions. And after class, people would say, oh, I'm so glad you asked that. So definitely do that. As far as career advice goes, one thing I want to make sure everybody knows is that just because you don't succeed the first time, keep on trying, right? If you don't get your dream job right out of school, it's okay. Get a job, get some experience, and then go find what you're passionate about. When I first started, I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a super technical person, solving equations and working on designs and stuff. And after a few years of that, I learned that wasn't for me. I looked back at my time in school, and I was always kind of a team lead and kind of the putter together of presentations and projects, and that's what led me to project engineering. So it's okay if what you wanted to do doesn't end up being what you actually do in the end. Just keep trying to find what you like, and I promise it's way easier to do a job that you like than a job that you don't like. So never give up and always keep trying.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you. Larry.
Yes, I'd like to piggyback on both Myra and Melissa's points. My main takeaway for this is there's a place in engineering and in industry or academia for all of you. A little bit like Myra, I was so shy when I graduated ASU in mechanical engineering. I wouldn't talk to a stranger at McDonald's. Now I lead very large teams. I interact with a lot of people, but that was, that's 30 years of career development. But what I found also parallel with what Melissa said is I actually excelled the last 2 years at ASU when we got some capstone and more hands-on projects. In those days, there wasn't as much hands-on early on, which you have the opportunity for now. And then once I got into industry, I saw there was a role for that for systems engineering and project engineering and folks that want to understand how the whole product and the system interacts. And then I excelled and did well. So my bottom line message to you is there's a place for all of you, regardless of your personality style, your technical interests, the depth or breadth you want to go into. You just need to, like I think Melissa said, search it out and align your interests and your passions with industry needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Larry. Braden.
Okay. I think I have a couple, but one of the biggest ones I want to make sure you guys all remember, because I think this one's really important, is to join clubs, and especially ones that do like competitive projects and stuff like that, because people always make that joke about like, how do you get your first internship if they want you to have experience, but it's your first one, the key is clubs for that. You can get so much experience by, joining your like ASU rocketry team, or there's the small sat club, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there for students. And I know you feel like you're a freshman, you don't know anything, what can you bring to the table? Because I definitely thought that. So I never joined a club until I was a junior. And because I didn't think I was like capable of, bringing something to the table, but you totally are. And if nothing else, it gets you learning that much sooner. So you're going to have years of experience like in the club and working on hands-on on the technology, on the hardware, and learning these things earlier, so that when it comes to learning them in class, it's way less hard and way less scary. And it also, like I said, when you're going for your first internship, you've got tons of experience behind you. And that just looks amazing. The other thing I would recommend is going to office hours. Just wanted to throw this out there because I, as a freshman, thought like office hours, I don't know, were something like professors didn't really want to do, but like they'd be kind of like annoyed if you showed up or something. But so I was always scared to go. But office hours are really great, especially if you're like anytime, if you're having like questions on homework, or or just want to talk to them about their experiences. That's what they're there for, and they actually really love when students come in, because otherwise they just have to sit there and not do anything for an hour. So I definitely recommend showing up to those whenever you have a chance.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is great advice. So audience, definitely you're very lucky tonight. So why don't we open it up for your questions, and we'll go from there. Is there any questions?
Yes, so we have a lot of questions. The first question is, what is the most important skill you or your company looks for? And that's for everyone, so all panelists.
Okay, why don't we start with Braden this time?
Okay. I would say, this is kind of hard because it probably varies like from, depending on the specific position you're applying for. But a skill I like to look for is, like knowing how to use some of the programs, or showing that you've used it in some kind of project before. So more than just having like your skills section say MATLAB, but if I see in your experience that you use MATLAB to, analyze the transonic flow regime over an airfoil, and then that just is, it shows like, oh, they really know MATLAB. They're not just saying that they took, MAE 312 like everyone else did, so I think that's a really good thing to do, is, listing out your accomplishments, and, showing how you used it, not just saying it. Does that kind of answer the question?
Awesome. No, that's great.
Okay.
Larry, what would you add to that, please?
Yeah, I'd like to add collaborative team skills are critical regardless of the field of work you're pursuing or what position you're hired into. So being able to show you've been effective in your projects, internships, coursework, in generating results with others. I'd also add multidisciplinary exposure, so that you're not, even if you want to go deep in an area, but as some of our panelists indicated, you may learn, you want to broaden or go into different areas. But companies today work in multidisciplinary teams, so your exposure to that during your college career can give you an advantage. And then lastly, and you can Google this, the new buzzword, I think it's been evolving over a decade, is digital engineering. So skills in model-based system engineering and model-based engineering that you can get out of your coursework or projects. Those are also critical in growing demand.
Excellent. Thank you so much. How about Melissa? Do you have anything to add to that as well?
Sure. So I'm actually a recruiter for ASU from Honeywell. So I've been to, I think, every career fair since I graduated, looking for students. So over the years, and depending on the open positions, obviously our targets change, whether we're hiring for mostly interns or for full-time, and depending on which groups. But the things that I pay most attention to, it seems like lots of students focus on GPA, and it's super important to have a good GPA, right? But for me, GPA doesn't tell the whole story, right? It just means you can study really well and be good at doing a test, right? So I look for the things you do outside of the classroom, right? What clubs are you involved in? Do you have any leadership positions on those clubs? Or in your school projects, right? What work are you doing with your team to come up with a solution, and not just, I think it's pretty easy in a group project to have one or two people do all of it and everybody else just kind of coast along. So I want to hear specific examples of what you yourself are doing for that. So those are kind of things that I look for. GPA, sure, it's one part of your story, but I like to look at everything else. There's 6 out of 10 people have that 4.0. What makes you different from all of them?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Myra, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I do have one quick thing. So
Sure.
I'm also a recruiter, and when you're at a career fair talking to a lot of students, you'll notice that almost every student is taking the same classes. They all have the same projects. So what I look for is a student who has initiative and who is a leader. So if I see that you're working on a project outside of class on your own, that you built yourself, that catches my attention. If I see that you're president of a club or you're the lead of a committee, that tells me that you're willing to take on more work than is expected, because this is all stuff you're doing on your own time. So that's what I look for.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, I know we have some more questions. Audience questions?
Yes. So how do you, or do any of you see benefits to pursuing a double major in related engineering field? So maybe if we can have recruiters answer this question.
Okay. How about Melissa? Would you have some insights here?
Sure. So I am someone who thinks that education is something that nobody can take away from you, right? So if you're willing to put in the work to get that extra education, I think that's great. Sometimes it might be confusing to recruiters when you have majors that are not necessarily related. But you know, like if you did a double major in aerospace engineering and math, I'm not sure how much that math one will get you, but if you want to do a double major in aerospace, maybe mechanical, right, that maybe just broadens your horizons on companies you can work for, right? Sometimes recruiters are not engineers, right? Sometimes they work in HR, so they may be only focused on what your resume says, that you have aerospace engineering, whereas engineers know that aerospace engineering is very close to mechanical, right? So you may be able to broaden your horizons by having both things on your resume. So like I said, more education is always good if you have the funds and the time to do it, but I don't think it's necessarily necessary.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Myra, do you have other points on that?
Pretty much the same thing as Melissa, but I will say that if you have two majors, that's double the opportunity, right? You can apply to all of the positions within one major and then the other positions in your other major. So it just gives you more opportunities. I have had friends who've done double majors, and that's just because they were very passionate about both. So if you have a lot of interest, that's what I would recommend.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great question. Great answers.
Can I add to that? I
Sure.
also have done some recruiting for Honeywell. So
Yes.
yeah, I would say it's kind of along the same lines as, yeah, definitely, especially if they're related. But I would say another thing to think about is like if it provides you with like classes that you would prefer to take. Because I know, for example, a lot of people do double majors in aerospace engineering and then one of the like School of Earth and Space Exploration classes, because those ones are really cool if you're into space, because they do a lot of like really cool mission design and stuff like that, but they don't get you that engineering degree. So you don't get to, you know, call yourself an engineer after you take those classes, even though a lot of them are engineering related. So that's like a really fun one to do if you're interested in like space missions and also engineering.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Any other points to add to that?
But yeah, David, Larry, I'd like to add, I'll echo everything that was said, but in the end, I think as maybe Myra or Melissa said, when a recruiter, I'm not a recruiter, although I build big teams and engineers move on and off my teams from a labor pool. But in the end of the day, you're going to need to get through an interview, multiple interviews. You're going to need to have an impactful resume that talks about how you've applied your knowledge. So if you maybe you can't afford the time or extra money on a double major, or even if you could, an alternate way to have the same impact and just differentiate yourself is make sure you gain those multidisciplinary experiences and things that you've contributed specifically to, as one of the panelists said, through your projects, co-curricular or extracurricular projects, your in-class projects, your capstone internships. You can gain some of that knowledge and then market that through your resume and your interviews in a similar manner as if you had a second major.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Yeah, so I'll just summarize. We have a lot of questions about work life. So work-life balance. What does your typical day looks like? How is your relationship with your coworkers? So just kind of an overview of your day-to-day life at work.
Okay. How about, can we start with Myra, please?
Yeah, for sure. So my day these days looks a lot different than several months ago, but usually I have a couple of meetings and then I spend some time just working in MATLAB, which is probably something that a lot of you will be working on. And then I have I have a lot of meetings where I discuss requirements and design with experts and other engineers. And I'm very lucky that I have a really good team. I've worked in 2 different departments within Honeywell, and in both departments, I've been very lucky to have really interesting coworkers that we would hang out outside of work. And I also had really great mentors. So I've been very lucky. I also get the opportunity to do a lot of testing. So that can be in a simulated bench within the building, or it can be testing out in a remote facility where we can see the engine like right there in front of us. It's really loud. It's very exciting. So it's meetings, working on my own, and then getting together with my teammates and testing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Does anybody have anything that they would want to share in addition to that from the panel? Any additions?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, similar. I guess this is more along, I guess, relationships with coworkers / work-life balance. But I know Honeywell's recently started this heighten your professional experience group at a few of the sites, and I think they're planning on spreading it. But that one's pretty fun because, I mean, we have like clubs within Honeywell for kind of like extracurricular stuff. So they can range from a whole bunch of stuff. But for example, I'm in a rock climbing club with Honeywell, and so I get to, hang out with my coworkers outside, and I found out which of my coworkers, are interested in the same things as me, and we, do things outside of work along those lines and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. They also put on, some fun events and stuff like that, and I would say that stuff's really fun. And yeah, just I think agreed with Myra that you have mentors and you have your coworkers, and it's all good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Melissa, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. So as my career has progressed, obviously very early in my career, you're given projects and whatnot. And earlier in your career, those projects are not as complex or as big as when you get older in your career, right? So when I first started, I was given 1 or 2 projects at a time when I worked in structures. I had just a couple of meetings per week, really. And so I had lots of time to work in ANSYS and working my models and stuff. And now that my career has progressed, now I'm a technical lead for my engine. I'm in meetings all day, usually from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. every single day. And so right now in my project, my work-life balance sucks, truthfully. But there are ebbs and flows in your career, and right now my career is peaking as much work as I can possible in one day as I can. But hopefully when things cool down a little bit, I can get back to a good work-life balance where maybe I'm only in meetings for 5 or 6 hours per day, and that leaves me a couple hours to do actual work. So it depends on your job. It depends on where you are in your career, and it changes over time.
Awesome. I appreciate the contrast. Larry, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just had a couple things to piggyback on Melissa. One, well, first, I don't know, most of the panelists have probably been to some of the on-campus career roundtables, and these questions come up a lot. Students will say, "Oh, that job sounds so hard," or do you have a life outside of work? I guess companies and organizations want employees that are going to work hard and do what it takes, or more than it takes at times, but companies want healthy employees and balanced employees and happy employees. So I think you'll find over your career, well, first of all, don't be frightened to come out in the industry. You won't be given more than you can handle, or you'll be challenged and you can grow incrementally, as panelists have talked about. But you can design your lifestyle as it needs to change over your career. For the most part, that's what I've experienced, and you'll have peaks and troughs where you'll have to work harder, and times where you can take your foot off the gas. And you'll learn new skills. You'll learn how to delegate or share work across the team if your workload is getting too high. So you'll learn tactics to be able to handle those types of workloads. But overall, I think you'll find, especially today, there's a labor shortage in aerospace and aerospace defense. If you have the right skills and the right capabilities, you're going to be graduating in 3, 4, 5 years is a good time where you can design the career balance that you choose.
So I have something to add, and Larry touched on it, that you can kind of pick and choose when the jobs are good for you for good career life balance. So I have 2 kids, and I had them at a time when my career was not crazy. I was pretty steady in a job, and it was pretty much a 40 to 45 hour per week job. And so I knew that if I had a child, I wouldn't be working 60 hours per week. And so I timed my family life, so that's the balance side of things, right? Around my job being in an okay spot. And that really helped me from that perspective be able to pay attention to what was important at the time.
Very cool. Thank you so much, everybody. Next question, please.
Yes. So can you talk a little bit more about internship, how to get internship, where to get started? Basically, what is your advice for internship? And specifically, a student asked, what do interns do at Honeywell?
Okay. Braden, would you mind answering this one for us?
Yeah, kind of like I said before, I think having, those experiences with clubs will help you get your first one, because that shows that you're willing to, you're learning how to learn on the job kind of stuff, and that's all very important for an internship. The other good thing to do to get them is to put yourself in a position to actually meet recruiters in person. Applying online puts you in a really big pool, so I don't think it's always the most effective way to find jobs. But going to those career fairs are a great way to meet with people hiring. Joining those professional organizations like SWE, the Society of Women Engineers, or AIAA, or SEDS, for example. I met the director of engineering at Honeywell at a SEDS meeting, and that's how I got talking to him about and found out about positions available. And so doing something that it's kind of basic networking, but getting yourself out there will definitely help you get your first one. And then what internships are like at Honeywell. So Honeywell really treats their interns like they're real employees, because we want to, give you guys the best experience closest to what you should expect if you're full-time. So when you start on, your day-to-day is pretty much what a day-to-day would be if you were a new hire. You get given, you work with the team, and you work on actual programs every day. And then you also get assigned an intern project, which is with you and a team of other interns at your site. And that the project changes every year, but that's one where you're kind of allowed to, gives you an opportunity to explore different types of engineering. So like maybe you're hired onto a analyst group, but with the intern project, maybe you'll play around in some design or testing as part of the project. And that can kind of like get you a feel of, oh, maybe this is actually something I enjoy more. And then you can talk with that group and, maybe try that one next time. So yeah, that's kind of the answer.
Awesome, thank you. Myra or Melissa, do you have anything to add on that?
I do. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience getting an internship, because I actually started off as an intern at Honeywell, and then I was able to get a full-time offer after graduation. So I will echo what Braden said. It's very important to join clubs and network that way. So what I did my freshman year in college is I joined AIAA, which is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and a fantastic club for aerospace engineers. And they organized a tour of a research lab at U of A. And I was so impressed with the research lab that I emailed the professor and let him know how cool his research was. And I asked if he needed any help. And he actually got me to join his lab, so in a research position. So I got a lot of experience out of that. Just one tour, one email, and then I had a job. And I used that research position and all that experience that I learned to get an internship at Honeywell, because I was able to let them to communicate how I could translate those skills to an internship at Honeywell. So I know it might be a little difficult now to get a research position, but you could always do maybe like data analysis remotely, or there's always a way to get experience in. And I think one of the easiest ways is to go through a club or email a professor and get some experience that way. And the easiest thing to do is go to the ASU website and look for research and read the little blurbs to see what your professors are doing, and email them and let them know that you're interested. and eventually that'll translate into an internship, hopefully.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Melissa, do you have anything to add as well?
I also started at Honeywell as an intern. I actually did an internship during my last semester of senior year. I applied. Somebody at Honeywell posted a job on the ASU Career Board website. I forget what it's called back then. It's probably different by now. But they were actually looking for someone who was graduating in December. And I thought, why not? So I applied. Had a great interview, and they offered me the job, obviously not full-time, so they let me actually turn that full-time job position into an internship for my last semester of school. I was able to take my my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so that worked really well for me. And you want to start looking for internships as early as you can. A lot of companies don't hire interns before their junior year, but there are companies out there that do. I had friends who had internships their sophomore years. So definitely keep trying. It's good practice anyway to go talk to recruiters at career fairs. I find that that's the best way. After talking to hundreds of students at a career fair, ones that always stick out to me are ones that are different from everybody else, right? I talked earlier about everybody has a 4.0 and everybody's doing all the same projects in the same classes. What sets you apart, right? That's how I'm going to remember you later when I'm deciding who gets what job.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Yes, so of all the courses that you took in college, what is the subject that you find yourself using the most? To add to that, what other subjects or classes would you recommend taking outside the major? Yes.
Okay, and Larry, do you mind answering this one?
Sure. Let's see. First off, I think I mentioned it earlier, just by the nature of work that I've been doing the last couple of decades, engineering economics, and what maybe to broaden that, learning the business of engineering, which you can learn through your Engineering 101 course, engineering economics, and probably a number of other electives or required courses. But just understanding the impact of your decisions and your engineering contributions on the cost of a product, cost, quality, and timely delivery to the marketplace of a product. So that might be a class that you look at and you say that's what do I need to know that I'm studying as an aero or whatever your focus. But for me, I've used that heavily over my career, and especially if you grow into a project engineer or project manager job, as some of the other panelists have mentioned. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Great. Well, thank you for the economics. Absolutely. I heard you guys talking about MATLAB as well. Does anybody else have anything to add as far as classes go?
I did take a technical sales and marketing class just because I had heard really good things about the professor. It was not a required class. I wasn't even really interested in the material, but the professor, again, had a lot of really great accomplishments. But I really, really enjoyed that class, and it taught me a lot about technical writing and about marketing and how to best sell a product. And that's been really helpful in my career now, just because I feel like it helps me better explain technical details via email. And it's really important that you're able to be understood. So it's helped a lot.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other points?
Dave, this is Larry.
Yes.
I have one go back that I just prompted. I'd be remiss without mentioning that ASU has an outstanding program in engineering management. I think you can take that as a degree program, but as an aerospace engineer, I think you can take some electives. But in that curriculum, there's risk management and project management, all those types of things that most of us on this panel use day to day, because it's not all about what product you get out of MATLAB or computational fluid dynamics. It's also about most of us work in industry have to manage risks every day and make decisions based on risk. Understand how to lay out projects and sequence work. So I would highly encourage you to check out the engineering management aspect of the catalog for potential electives.
Excellent.
I would second what Larry says, because I wish I had done that. You don't really learn a lot of that stuff until capstone, and it would have been good to get some of that ahead of time.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm piling on here. Dan McCarville, who runs that program, came out of industry. He worked in semiconductor and other parts of the business, and he's actually got a team of folks there. I forget the other gentleman's name that came out of Honeywell in Phoenix. He's got a great team of professors and staff that run that program that you could learn a lot from.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Yes. So next question is how and why you chose your career. What is the most stimulating, I think, project you or stimulating thing you do in your field? And yeah.
Okay. Melissa, do you mind answering that one for us?
Sure. So I picked aerospace engineering very early on, probably when I was a sophomore or junior in high school. My family's all in the aviation industry. My mom works for an airline. It has since I was a little kid, and my grandparents own a flight school, and my uncle's a pilot. So I've always been around the aviation industry since I was a kid. And then I took a drafting and CAD classes in high school by a retired Boeing engineer who retired and became a high school teacher, and that's where I really learned that my love of aviation, and I was really good at math and science, and all that came together into engineering. So it's just a nice, easy thing for me to pick that just made sense for me. I had done some research, and I knew that I wanted to. Engineering was the biggest bang for my bachelor's degree buck. I didn't necessarily need to go to grad school for anything. I could get a job right away, and the earning potential was really good. And so those were all the things that really went into my decision to do engineering, and it's paid off really well for me. No complaints at all. And the second part of the question was, what was the second part of the question?
So what stimulates you in your field, or why do you like your field of work?
Sure. So the aerospace industry is constantly changing, right? This year, the aerospace industry really did a big downturn, right, with all the COVID stuff, and companies are trying to figure out how we move on in this space where less people are traveling and whatnot. And so for Honeywell, we have a pretty diverse portfolio outside of aerospace, right? So one thing that's nice about working for a big company is that because we're so diverse, we can weather those downturns in a particular industry. So what I love about aerospace is that it's exciting. It's not only the commercial side of aerospace. There's the military side of aerospace, and there's so much new stuff happening. There's always new cutting edge technology coming out, and how do you integrate that into products that are 50 years old? I just think it's exciting. There's new stuff all the time, and I'm never bored, and it's fun.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any other points that they would want to add or share? Okay.
I'm happy to share my story.
Oh, sure. Yes, please, Braden.
Okay. Well, I had never known anything about engineering growing up. I didn't know what it was until I was a senior in high school, actually. I just, was following the AP track, and I really liked math and physics. And so one of my teachers at the time suggested it, and I, just signed up because I didn't know what else to do. Because I grew up in both my parents were art majors. So this is a very different field for me. And then I picked astro because I always, I was really into exploration, and I feel like space is the final frontier. So it was kind of just the one that seemed most exciting to me. And then what I work on now is, I think perfect for that because, making CO2 removal or life support for human space is what's helping create an enduring human presence outside of Earth and just, helping, make that future happen. And I think that's really a great thing to be a part of.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
What is the job growth outlook in the companies you are looking at? Is there a need for aerospace engineers within the coming 20 years?
Okay. Myra, would you answer this one for us, please?
That's a big question. I can only speak about what I'm seeing in my current field, and I do think there will be a big need for aerospace engineers, at least at Honeywell. I know we're recruiting people now. We're constantly looking for new projects that we can work on. There's projects in the works, and I do think there's going to be a lot of really cool technology coming in the future. So if anyone else on the panel can help answer this question, it's a big one.
Sure. Yeah. Anybody else have some points on that?
This is Larry. I'll piggyback. Yeah, our industry, whether you're working in commercial space or aviation, what have you, the different market segments, I think they're all dynamic and growing over the next 20 years as we see, space opened up for more applications and continuing to exploit space to improve our quality of life and environment, solve problems here on Earth. Faster modes of transportation, cleaner modes of air transportation, autonomous transportation, embedding AI. I think the next 20 years is going to be a huge opportunity in aerospace, combined with whatever other interests and multidisciplinary expertise you have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Yes, so the next question is, what are the restrictions and limitation like for foreign nationals aspiring to work in the aerospace industry with regulations like Itar? Yep.
Okay. Anybody on the panel familiar with that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Oh, go ahead, Larry.
No, I was just going to ask
if
if you could reframe the question a little bit, but if you're ready to answer, go ahead, please.
So my understanding of the question is what are the considerations that international students have to take when trying to enter into a workforce that has ITAR restrictions? Is that kind of what the question was?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's definitely, so I'm going to speak from a Honeywell Aerospace perspective, right? So a lot of the jobs that we have in the U.S. do require a U.S. citizenship or green card, and that's because we work on government programs and have all the ITAR restrictions. That's not to say that every aerospace company will have that, right? I think it just depends, but it's definitely, I find it definitely more difficult.
Excellent. Thank you. Did you have something to add to that, Larry?
No, I think I would agree with that response.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question, please.
Next question is in regards to knowing another language. How beneficial is it to knowing another language or even studying abroad?
Okay. Actually, I'll start with you, Larry, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to slow down and think about this one. So I think, as one of the panelists said earlier, bringing something broader to differentiate yourself from other candidates can never hurt you. Given that most of our business and economy is global and multinational, and a lot of companies, even small companies, have a presence around the world or marketing themselves around the world. I think it can be an obvious advantage being able to speak multiple languages and having different perspectives to bring to a prospective employer. I mean, we're only getting more and more global, and technologies across the oceans and find their ways into all types of aerospace products. So that would be my input.
Excellent. Thank you. Myra, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. I think it's always great to speak another language, just because when you're working with, as Larry said, a global workforce, you're kind of bridging that gap, right? So you kind of have more in common. I do speak Spanish, and I speak a little bit of French, and I've worked with people in France and Mexico and in Puerto Rico, and it's always just nice to be able to communicate in the language. What's funny though is that a lot of the technical terms don't translate super well, so we just say it in English. But it is helpful, and it is a great way to differentiate yourself, for sure, as Larry mentioned.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else, Melissa or Braden, do you have anything to add to that?
I echo all the same sentiments.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
same. It's definitely not necessary, but I'm always a fan of learning new languages because I like making those connections, kind of like Myra said.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, next question, please.
So this question is mainly for Myra, Melissa, and Braden. Did you ever face gender discrimination in engineering for being a woman? If so, how did you overcome this?
Can we start with Braden, please?
Yeah. I would say my experience at Honeywell has been great. We actually have like almost all of the managers, I think a majority of the managers are girls actually. So that's fantastic. And when I started on, the senior technical manager was a woman, and our director of engineering was a woman. So I have a lot of role models to look up to. And I know it wasn't the same for them. I know when they started, like when Terry Taylor started, she was the only girl like in the entire um, Glendale site. So that would have been crazy. But yeah, at Honeywell, I haven't had any problems. I definitely have had problems like during, I guess, like some career fairs and like previous interviews before. But I mean, I don't know if I had any good advice for what to do about it. Sorry,
Well, no,
on that occasion. But I feel like if you are being, I mean, for me, it was kind of like, well, I wouldn't want to work with that person anyway. So I didn't take it to heart.
I appreciate you sharing. Myra or Melissa, do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll take a shot with that. So yes, I don't think a lot of or anything I've faced has been conscious bias, right? It's more that unconscious bias. And the way I combat that is I kind of prove to them that I belong here, right? I'm really good at what I do, and me being a woman has zero impact on that. It probably makes me better at it, actually. And so that's really how I combat it, right? I prove that I belong there by showing my skills, my technical expertise, and after a while they go, oh, okay, yep, she belongs here. I think a lot of what I got more so than gender discrimination was probably age discrimination when I had first started, right? Being young women, it is a double whammy, right? Being a 22-year-old just fresh out of college, starting your first job. I think a lot of them don't take you seriously, right? And it's true, you come out of college knowing a whole lot, but not knowing very much at all when you first start. And that's fine. That's kind of an expectation, but it's really about just letting people know that you belong where you are, and showing those skills, and people will learn that it's okay to accept that, and that's how it's worked out for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Myra?
I just have one quick story. So I've been very lucky. I haven't seen very much gender discrimination. The only real instance that something happened was when I was an intern, and I had a male intern tell me that I only had that internship because I was female. And I did what Melissa did. I said, well, look at my resume. Do you really think I'm just here because I'm a female? And in school, I had an amazing resume. Like, so there was nothing he could really say. So I just really mentioned that that's why I was there. So you just have to advocate for yourself if it ever comes up. I know it's easier said than done. Hopefully you don't encounter any gender discrimination, but if it happens, just stand your ground and know that HR people are there to help you.
Yeah, Myra, I wanted to add to that. That one has come to me before too. Whenever, and I'm sure that's not even just for gender discrimination, but of any kind. Sometimes people will like claim that you're the diversity hire or something like that. And I actually went to a Women in Space conference once, and this one speaker said something awesome about like, if someone calls you a diversity hire, like, so what? You should actually like, honestly, that's something to be proud of, because if you are, that meant you overcame like, you know, all those things that, you know, were holding you back, and you still, you know, kicked butt. Like, so I just thought that was a really great thing to think about.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Next question, please.
Yes. So if you could elaborate a little bit more of how hands-on is aerospace engineering?
Oh, okay. Since we're running low on time, how about just one of you answer, please? Does anybody want to take a shot at that in particular?
Yeah, sure, I could. I'll try to answer fast, but it does depend on the position. If you're a test engineer, for example, you'll be super hands-on all the time. For me, it's kind of a mix. I do a little bit of design and analysis, and then we also help with the build and test. And since I know we manufacture our stuff for space on site, so you can go down to the floor and see your products at any time. But it does depend on what exactly your job is. I know as like an analyst, you might not be super hands-on with the technology.
Awesome, thank you. Very cool. Next question, please.
So the next question is related to challenges you have faced when you started working. And to add to that, how would a graduate degree benefit, or whether it would be beneficial to get a graduate degree or pursue a 4+1 program?
Oh, okay. Actually, can I get your input on this one, Larry?
Sure. That's an interesting question. So for me specifically, my biggest challenge entering the workforce was I was just frighteningly shy, and I really didn't have a lot of hands-on experience. I did do an internship at Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station, which that dates me because I know they're that's on the end of its life, but I was there when they were turning it on. But for me, it was just overcoming my shyness and trying to find where I could add value and what where to match my interests and kind of uncovering and discovering my passions, because like I said, I kind of fell into engineering as a dual major and then had to figure out what to do with it. So with respect to extra degrees, for me, within a year of being out in industry, I was working at Lockheed Martin, doing modifications, exciting work on aircraft up at the Ontario airport at the time. I quickly realized that I liked seeing how the whole product came together and understanding the business of engineering. So I went for an MBA quickly while I was young and didn't have a family and kids. Not that you can. My son's doing that now. But for me, it was easier to get that done. And the MBA helped me immensely because it helped me understand how to organize work and the value of work. And as someone said earlier, technical writing or business writing and marketing of the product. And then I ended up using all that in the rest of my career. So that's kind of my story. Whether that's relevant to whoever's out in the audience that asked that, hopefully it is.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, since we're almost out of time, is there any parting words of wisdom? As there's been so much insight and just really some great input.
Dave, I guess maybe hopefully I leave somebody else time, but just 10 seconds for me. This is Larry. Somebody said earlier, be persistent, and I think you heard from my story. I kind of fell into engineering, but I've had a career that I could never dream of, and I think Braden, I think it's Braden that's working on human spaceflight. I had a issue I discovered on a shuttle mission on orbit that required the astronauts to take action before they went to sleep. I've just had some amazing experiences that I would have never had the opportunity had I not followed through with completing my degree and then working to find my place in industry. So I would encourage you just, work hard, don't give up, don't get frustrated. You have a lot of assets on campus, advisors, professors, what have you, and look for help when you're struggling and persist.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'd add to that with the, remember to have fun with it, and you're there to learn. So, don't always stress about the grades or if you have time to do everything you want to do, and just remember you're there to make the most out of, everything you can and enjoy yourself. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Myra?
Yeah, my thing is don't be afraid to fail. My very first semester of college, I failed my physics exam, but you know what? It's what you do after a failure that determines what's going to happen. So I just put my batteries in and I just got to work. So don't be afraid of little hiccups here and there. They're going to happen. Just make sure to keep going.
Excellent. Melissa?
Yeah, to echo what Myra said, don't give up. Your classes will be very hard. Find your study buddies and study together. I found that in college, I learned the most when I could teach it to somebody else, right? If I knew I could explain what we were doing in class to somebody else, I knew I was going to be okay on that test. Try really hard and find some internships, join the clubs, and you'll do great.
Oh, can I throw a bone to the ASU Fulton Engineering Tutoring Center? I used to work there, and it is one of the best, most fulfilling jobs you can have on campus, in my opinion. So, and it helps you learn your stuff and remember it for the rest of your 4 years. So it's a good place, and you can also go there to get help too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Well, on behalf of Fulton Schools of Engineering, I would like to thank the panelists for their time and insight. Panelists, you are welcome to mute yourselves and listen to the next panel or to leave the meeting and just students, after a 3-minute break, we will start with the next panel. Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Hello, welcome everybody. I would like to thank our panelists for taking time out of their days to be on our Aerospace Engineering Career Exploration Night panel. This event is being recorded and will be made available to your ASU 101 instructors in a few days. In case you become closed out of the meeting, please log in again. We will start our 5:30 to 6:30 panel here shortly. As the moderator, I will start with prepared questions directed to some or all of the panelists. Panelists, I will use your name so you know the question is directed towards you. If you would like to pass on answering a question, please feel free to say pass, or if you'd like to add something to that, please feel free. Students, your attendance is being recorded based on your registration information and length in the meeting. The attendance list will be given to your ASU 101 instructor. Use the question and answer box on the black Zoom bar to type career-related questions for your panelists. You can make up questions or use the questions out of your workbook. If the question is directed to specific panelists, please indicate their names in your question. Feel free to type in your questions now. Our question and answer moderator will read your questions shortly. Panelists, please take yourselves off mute, but remain off of video, and let's begin. All right. So the first question is actually for all of the panelists. To help our undergraduate first-year student audience know a little bit about you and also to formulate their questions, please give us your 1 to 2 minute professional tell me about yourself pitch, including how your formal education is used in your current or previous roles. Let's start with Taylor.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Alexander. I graduated from ASU in spring of 2017 and received my bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering with a focus in astronautics. I am currently working as a systems engineer with a specialty in reliability at Northrop Grumman here in Chandler, Arizona. I've been able to use my background in astronautical engineering to become quickly familiar with the rocket science lingo we use here at NG, but most importantly, the rigorous curriculum at ASU prepared me to observe what I learned quickly and ask questions about how we do things in industry compared to what I was taught in school at a theoretical level.
Awesome, thank you so much. Leo.
Hi, this is Leo Martinez, retired aerospace engineer. Spent most of my 30-plus year career in the design, test, and launch of many different launch vehicles, from tactical missiles, suborbital, and orbital vehicles as a propulsion and ordnance engineer. I designed and tested hardware from small pressure devices you could hold in your hand all the way up to being a project engineer on one of the last underground nuclear tests performed in Nevada back in the 80s. I participated in launching vehicles at every launch facility the U.S. launches rockets out of, and that includes the space shuttle and releasing spacecraft that went to Pluto. My last 3 years of industry work was as a chief engineering director for designing commercial avoidance systems for commercial aircraft, and I've been fortunate to manage people from all engineering disciplines. Having a broad engineering background that I've attained from ASU was a huge benefit. I've been involved in all aspects of running a business, from engineering, finance, manufacturing quality, and procurement, and subcontract management. And having that broad background from ASU really did provide me a lot of benefits throughout my career.
Excellent, thank you so much. Brianna.
Hi everyone, I'm Brianna. I graduated from ASU in aerospace engineering in May of 2016 with a focus in aeronautics. The summer before my senior year, I had an internship at ATK, which is now Northrop Grumman. And so I worked there that summer. Since it's a local company in Mesa, I was able to work part-time throughout the school year. And once I graduated, I started there full-time. I'm now currently at Honeywell for about almost 3 years. I started as a project engineer in the turboprop engines department, and I recently moved into the turbofan engines as a project and test engineer, which directly relates to propulsion engineering and aeronautics.
Excellent. Thank you. Ubaldo.
Hey, my name is Upaldo. I'm a Constellation operations engineer at a startup here in Seattle called Black Sky. So we're a geospatial intelligence company, which means we take pictures of the Earth and then run them through some machine learning algorithms and then extract information for global monitoring. Some of the stuff that I do is pretty broad and pretty in-depth. So one of the main roles that I have is sending commands to satellites when we launch new ones. So that's what we call commissioning, is just getting them ready for operations, for customers to be able to use. Another thing that I do is test ground system software. So I'm in charge. So, you know, we have weekly deployments, new code deployments to our ground stations, and I make sure that all of the code is working as it should. And I also write a lot of tools to make my job easier and make my coworkers' jobs easier. So it's pretty broad. Well, I use a lot of the stuff that I learned in my capstone in spacecraft design. So it's pretty cool, pretty directly applied.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. This question again is for all the panelists. Please tell us one piece of career advice or a career observation that you really want to ensure that our, you know, first year students, you know, that just got started, what they really need to hear. So can we start with Taylor, please?
Sure. So it wasn't until I worked in industry that I fully grasped how important and exciting engineering work is. When you first start your classes, the work seems overwhelming, frustrating, and maybe not applicable to what you were expecting to learn. But in industry, you get to focus on what interests you the most, and that you might only get to briefly learn about in your classes. So if you really like aerodynamics and you only get to take one class in school, but instead in industry, you get to build the wings and test them in an aerodynamics lab, that would be the place to actually focus on what interests you the most. You also get to learn about how your company engineers their products in a way you might not have learned in class, which is where internships will come in, and you get to be exposed to that well before you make the decision to pursue it full time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Leo.
Yeah, the one piece of advice I would give is to learn how to work and effectively lead in a team environment, while still not being afraid to take some risks along the way. You may fail, but I've learned a lot of things more from failures than success. So, effectively working in a team, learning how to speak in front of people as well as write, and to communicate effectively is extremely important.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brianna.
I agree 100% with Leo. I was going to say communication is really key. I know you may be thinking, you know, I joined engineering because I like math and science, not writing. But, you know, it really is important to be able to write clearly and concisely and be able to communicate with others that may not be in engineering as well. As a project engineer, I work with a lot of different disciplines outside of engineering. So it's really important to be able to work as a team and be able to communicate effectively.
Awesome. Thank you. Ubaldo.
Yeah, so the other panelists gave a lot of great points, and I would add specifically, though, in my case at least, I didn't take any formal coding courses, but I would highly recommend doing so, because when you go out into the field, it may be required for you to write your own tools, which is, you know, kind of what I'm doing now. So so it's definitely outside of the scope of our major, but in aerospace. But I'd highly recommend taking some of those coding classes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, I know last time we had a lot of questions, so why don't we open it up for audience's questions?
Yes. So the first question we had it from the last panel too, but didn't have time to answer it, is what are some career options for retired pilots in the military or retired engineers from the military?
Okay. How about Leo? Would you mind starting with that one?
Yeah, for retired pilots, I know in my last position at L3 Harris, we used pilots for testing a lot of our new collision avoidance systems that we're developing and working with our customers like Airbus and Boeing. And there were a lot of opportunities for us to have those type of people on board as employees, and then also help in supporting the training of new pilots that were coming on board.
Excellent. Does anybody else have some points? Taylor?
Sure. When I was at Honeywell Aerospace, I know that the avionics division in, I think it was Deer Valley, had a lot of simulators that they had pilots test out the avionics with. At Northrop Grumman, we do have a lot of retired or actually active military that work for us, and they get to work on a variety of programs. A lot of people come in with experience having worked the Misselman program, so that's helped them, or sorry, I should say Minuteman program, and so that's been helping them, bring in ideas for these new programs that use a lot of the same parts. But yeah, especially in aerospace engineering, I think there's a lot of career opportunities that you can take having a background in the military.
Awesome, thank you. Brianna Ubaldo, do you have anything to add to that too?
So at Honeywell, I work in the propulsion systems in Phoenix. So I work closely with our flight line department. So we do have several retired and military guys that were formerly pilots that work in that division as well. So working on engines and propulsion systems, that's pretty relevant as well.
Excellent. Ubaldo?
I would add that the military gives you a lot of great experience that you could apply directly in the industry. And you also have a lot of leadership experience as a pilot and as an officer. So I'd say don't be nervous about like being left out of opportunities. In fact, I think it's a good thing to have on your resume when you're going out for a job.
Awesome, thank you so much. Next question, please.
How much do you travel in your career, and is there any international travel involved?
Was that for anybody in particular?
Yes, all the panelists. So
Okay. Ubaldo, how about we start with you?
So at my old job, I was working at a company called EchoStar. There was some travel involved, but in my current role, there is hardly any. So I've been working remote since the pandemic started and since quarantine started. So I technically could travel, but there's no business case for it, for me at least.
Gotcha. Brianna, please.
Yeah, so when I worked in the turboprop division, I actually traveled a bunch as a project engineer. I was working with a lot of suppliers, or for critical design reviews, I would travel to their site, check out their manufacturing line, look at their products, and be present for when they presented their final design. So I went on maybe 6 trips one year, one of them including overseas to the UK for one of our suppliers over there. In my current role, I haven't had the opportunity to travel yet because of the pandemic, but I know several coworkers in the past have traveled to UK, to Spain. We have a customer in Brazil, so there really is opportunities, especially in Taiwan, for international travel.
Awesome, thank you. Leo?
Yeah, I've traveled extensively throughout my career. Because I was involved with rockets and ordnance, you had to travel to test sites and launch facilities, as well as dealing with all the major corporations that were the primes, the Boeings, Raytheons, and Lockheed Martins, and companies like that, as well as the test sites. So got well over 1 million miles over the years. So done a lot of it. And also too, I had a lot of people travel for me internationally when we started doing more manufacturing in China and India, and also having subcontracts in Mexico and India for software development.
Oh, wow, thank you. Taylor, please.
Yeah, in my first role, I was working at a startup that developed software, so I did have the opportunity to travel to our customers to show them how our software worked with their products. In my current role at Northrop Grumman, I unfortunately haven't had the opportunity to yet. We have a lot of launch campaigns every year that we have the people from those programs go out to the islands and those kind of launch campaigns require security clearances. I didn't receive mine until right before the pandemic started, so haven't had that opportunity yet, but a lot of people do get to see their rocket launch in person, which I think is pretty exciting.
Wow, wow, very cool. Thank you. Next question, please.
How important is it to get research experience as opposed to internships in college?
Is this also for everybody?
Mhm.
Awesome. Brianna, would you mind starting us off on this one?
Yeah, sure. I actually participated in the Fulton Undergraduate Research Initiative, doing some research on microbuckling and strain of composites. So that was pretty interesting, and definitely a lot of different skill sets than getting an internship where it's a different kind of hands-on experience. I also got more experience in writing a report and things like that, and the technical nature of writing. So kind of both internships and lab experience, there's pros and cons, but I would say if you have the opportunity to do both, definitely go for it.
Excellent. Thank you. Ubaldo, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I actually did. I also participated in Fury in my sophomore year. I worked with the Sun Devil Satellite Lab on attitude determination and control systems. That research experience helped me land my internship during my junior year, which translated into a full-time job after I graduated. So I think if you can do both, certainly go for it. All the professors at ASU, or a lot of professors at ASU, are doing a lot of cool research, and I'd advise students to bug them a little bit and try to volunteer in their labs if possible.
Great, thank you. Taylor, do you have something to add to that?
Sure. I personally did not do any engineering research at ASU while I was there. I actually worked as a research intern for a supply chain company, and while I was there, I learned a lot of different programs as to how to collect data and process information, and learned how to apply what I was, the data I was gathering to real world experience, which I think you would get that in research versus industry a little more. I think also as a researcher, you would probably get more focused and specialized in a specific aerospace area versus industry. You might get a little more of a broad experience. But I think I agree with Brianna and Ubaldo where either would be very beneficial to your career.
Excellent, thank you. Leo, do you have any other points to that?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on what the individual person really wants to get into. I mean, both can be beneficial, but I agree with what Taylor said. Research will get you more focused into a specific area, where internship can give you typically will give you a more broad experience base, because a lot of times we had interns do more things than just engineering work, or a broader area of engineering work that included test, design, drawings, documentation, all sorts of things, and also getting exposure to manufacturing. So I think a lot just depends on what your preferences are. Both are good, and it can't hurt if you can get into them.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Next question, please.
What was the transition like going from college to workforce, and how did your perception change of your job, from what you knew in college?
Okay. Ubaldo, can you start us off on this one?
Sure. So I was spending pretty much all day on campus. Yeah, I had gaps throughout the day between classes, and it seemed like I had a lot of free time, which I spent doing homework. And then following at graduation and going full time, I found myself having a lot more free time after work. So working that 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. It's very structured, and I didn't have any homework to do at the end of the day, so I was able to get back into my hobbies.
Very cool. Brianna, can you share your experience, please?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned in my introduction that I worked as an intern, turned into part-time during the school year, and then a full-time at that company. So it was pretty seamless transition from me. I got to know the company really well. But yeah, kind of like Ubaldo was saying, there's a big difference, a little bit of a difference between going from having schoolwork to suddenly just having only your job and suddenly this free time and things to do. Um,
Very cool. Oh, sorry.
oh no, sorry, that was it.
Great. Taylor?
So I'm sure a lot of the people on the call have had a first job before, so it was a little intimidating for me to get my first full-time job. Wasn't sure what to expect going from school and focusing solely on school, and then whatever free time, just working part-time jobs, to going focusing explicitly on work was a bit of a what's it called? Culture shock, I guess, is the best way to put it. But I really enjoyed the shift to full-time. As Waldo mentioned, there's a lot more free time. I can actually focus on a lot of the hobbies I had to kind of give up while I was in school. Our job gives us every other Friday off, so I've actually been able to do small weekend trips that I wasn't able to do while I was in college, unless it was the month off during break. But I think the biggest thing is also it's very different having people that are more your age and then going to more diverse environment. So you're not as easily making, the friends that you were in school, but you are making a lot more long-term friends that are also trying to help you move up in your career, which is, I guess, part of becoming an adult, the exciting part about becoming an adult.
Awesome. Awesome. Leo, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I really didn't know anything about industry going into work when I accepted a job up in Salt Lake City at Hercules back then. Internships were not common. I didn't have an internship before I started. So I didn't even fly on an airplane until I started interviewing to get a job when I was getting out of school. So I was pretty green. But so it was a pretty good shot for me to get into the working environment, getting to know people in the area. But I think the thing that was good for me is that I did have a really, really great group of people that I was teamed with to start with, and they really helped me out to get to know the area and get involved with things outside of work. And that was real beneficial to me.
Great. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
What are some challenges you have faced in your career that you did not expect? How did you overcome them and become successful?
Okay. Taylor, do you mind starting us off on that one?
Sure. So one thing I wasn't really expecting when I came into Northrop Grumman is how quickly they, made me responsible for my own tasks. And I, had practice with that in school with managing my time with my classes and my homework. But in this case, it was, working with a customer and being on their schedule and having that shift around a lot, not really sure who to go to for help, and also trying to learn how the company runs and what they're building, and reading documentation to get myself familiar, all while trying to manage this was a little scary, and still happens sometimes, especially now that I'm in a newer role. But one thing I've noticed in my career is that people have been very helpful if you do ask them questions. I know even in school it's kind of intimidating to ask your peers or your teachers for help, but if you start doing that now, it definitely helps you when you start working full time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ubaldo, can you share something for us?
Yeah, so I was just reflecting on this, and I think one thing that really was difficult for me was going from a very structured setting, which is school, into kind of what seemed to me as so I guess I get specific with this. So like in school, all the assignments that I had, there was always an answer and there was always a correct answer. But when you go out into the field, some of the projects that I was assigned were pretty hard, and I was kind of afraid because I was fresh out, afraid to ask for help because I felt like it might I might seem like I didn't know what I was doing, but coming to find out, that's what makes a good engineer is working as a team and asking for help. So that was really tough for me because I was always pretty independent. So just going into that collaborative environment was a little tough.
Awesome. Thank you. Leo.
Yeah, the biggest, a couple of things that were the biggest challenges for me was to learning the technology in regards to solid propellants and explosive ordnance devices and, and the safety aspects of that business, because if engineers or people make mistake, people get hurt. So it was a real challenge for me to get comfortable with that, being able to walk into areas where things really do blow up. Also, two of the big things that I had to learn quickly were all the acronyms that you'll have to learn that are in that business. And then I thought I knew how to write. I took technical writing courses in school, but I had a rude awakening when I got into work. And that's something that I really had to learn. I did get really good at it to where I taught classes in technical writing later on in my career, but it was something that was really something that was a challenge to get good at.
Excellent. Thank you. Brianna.
I think what everyone else said pretty much sums it up. But what Leo just said kind of brought up a funny memory. I'm currently writing a certification report, and one of our chief engineers is very picky about grammar, and I didn't realize how picky some people can be. So he's like, some of you need to go back to 5th grade grammar class, and it's just kind of a wake-up call saying, hey, you really need to pay attention to these kinds of things, this kind of detail. Otherwise, especially for something as serious as a certification report for the FAA, little things really do matter. They really play a really big role.
You sure that wasn't me?
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
I'm going to combine a few questions here. So what would your advice would be for freshmen, and what would you do differently if you had a chance to go back to ASU?
Okay. Leo, do you mind starting us off on this one?
The first part of the question was what again? I'm sorry.
So what advice would you give a freshman engineering student?
Okay, yeah, that one, I really would stress learning really, really good study habits, because I didn't have when I started, and it did really impact my progress getting through. And like people have said before, don't be afraid to ask questions, and get with a group of people that have like minds and study habits, so that you can succeed together. And that's what I would suggest. Do anything different in my career? I don't think I'd do anything different.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Brianna?
Well, doing something different, not so much at ASU, but when I first started my internship, I think Ubaldo kind of mentioned, I was really independent and I was a little scared to ask for help. So I was really tentative. I didn't want to ask any stupid questions, but I learned after a while that, you have to ask those kinds of questions to really learn. People really look for, I think, a general question is kind of like, what do you look for in an intern? The willingness to learn and to ask questions. And that shows that, you're really interested and you want to get more experience. And I was really shy at first, so that's something that I really needed to kick up. And that's definitely something I would go back and change sooner.
Gotcha. Thank you. Ubaldo?
Yeah, I have a few things. So the main one would be learning good time management early on. I didn't learn my lessons until I hit my junior year. And at that point, I had really terrible time management skills. Like I was just getting very little sleep, and it really affected my performance. But, junior year really kicked my butt, and it really got me into making sure that I was like managing my time properly, getting enough sleep. So that's number one is kind of what Leo mentioned at the beginning was forming good study habits, which, time management kind of goes hand in hand with that. The second thing I would do is I would really pursue trying to get experience on campus. while you're a freshman. And what I mean by that is like trying to get experience in a lab, because that's something you can put on your resume early on, and your chances of getting an internship as a sophomore and junior really increase.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Taylor?
So a few of the pieces of advice I have are also things I wish I would have done when I was a freshman. First was to go meet my professors in their office hours. It turned out that a lot of the professors I had my first and second year ended up being my third and fourth year professors as well. So I feel like if I would have established a relationship with them ahead of time and also taken advantage of going to ask them questions early on, that would have benefited me down the road as well. Take your classes seriously from the start. They just get harder, and you use what you learned in the previous semester going forward and just keep building on that. So if you don't take those seriously to begin with, then it's just going to make you struggle as you progress through your degree. And the third thing is to get to know your classmates. I know there's probably 400 people in your class, so that can be very difficult to do. But once I reached my fourth year, I only had 20 people in my class, and I only knew one of them since I had started at ASU. And I would have loved to have known them ahead of time, been able to work with them on projects and homework, and then it would have made it even easier to share ideas come capstone and project time by the fourth year.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, everybody. Next question, please.
Next question is, what year was the hardest or most challenging to you during your college, and why?
Okay, Brianna, do you mind answering this question, please?
Yeah, sure. Let me think for a second. I'm thinking it's a mix between junior and senior year, I guess, because junior is when you start really getting to all those technical electives and your big classes, especially when you're trying to get in all your extracurriculars and, working on your resume and really that stress of trying to get in your internship. But also senior year for me was, just trying to get through that last stretch. You kind of get that feeling like you're almost there, but it's close but far away. Also working part-time while going to school full-time was a little bit of a struggle, but that helped with time management and working on skills like that. So I would say those last 2 years were a little tricky, but made it out all right.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Does anybody else have any point on that they would want to share? Okay, how about we go to the next question, please?
How useful is a master's degree in finance after graduating as an aerospace engineer? And would you recommend it if I'm working for an airplane or airline company?
Okay, Leo, do you mind answering that one for us?
Sure. Finance could be extremely beneficial, either whether you're fully in engineering itself, or if you want to expand and be a project engineer or an engineering manager, because you definitely will be dealing with cost and budgets and being able to interface effectively with the finance organization and senior management to talk about your budgets and projections is extremely important. Being able to understand all of the finance sheets and everything else that goes with the business can be helpful and useful if that's the direction you want to go, which but if you want to stay more technical oriented and climb the engineering ladder on a technical side, it probably isn't as important, but still it can be useful just from a standpoint of being able to manage budgets and times that most every engineer has to do at some point in their career.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have a point to add to that? Okay. Why don't we go to the next question, please?
Next question is for Leo. How widely available are jobs in propulsion and test?
Oh, I think there's a lot of jobs out there. And for good people, there are really a lot of jobs. We were always looking for good people. If you can get an internship and show yourself, and this is at multiple businesses and divisions that I've worked at and hired people, is there are so many opportunities for aerospace engineers because you have a much broader base of experience in electrical, mechanical, software, systems, that you can be placed in a lot of different areas that other engineers that are more focused in mechanical or just electrical. So the opportunities are there as long as you are able to show that you've got good grades and that you've done additional things during your career at ASU, and hopefully getting internships and things like that. So don't be afraid to branch out and look at a lot of variety, but there are definitely jobs out there. We always actually found openings or made openings for people that were good when we found them, because they're hard to find.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question, please.
This question is for Baldo. What other coding languages other than MATLAB do you use on a daily basis, and what coding language or what coding classes would you recommend?
Yeah, so at my old job, I was pretty much exclusively using MATLAB. At the new job, we exclusively use Python. There is some Java and JavaScript, but I personally only use Python. And then can you repeat that second part of that question?
What language or what coding classes would you recommend students to take?
Okay. Yeah, I would recommend actually taking a C++ course, just because it's, I think you really learn the fundamentals when you're taking a C++ course.
Great. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
This question is for Brianna. What is the most important class in your opinion for propulsion engineering?
Obviously, I mean, we have our propulsion class, but as a project engineer, actually, all of the technical classes are really relevant because I deal with so many different disciplines. So I deal with, actual aerodynamics, I deal with structures, I deal with materials and everything. So it's kind of a hard question for me. I don't think there's any one class that I would say stands above the others.
Okay. Does anybody else have any points on that? Okay, we'll go to the next question, please.
And this is for anyone who wants to answer. How did you come to the decision to major in aerospace engineering? Was aerospace engineering your first choice?
Taylor, do you mind starting us off with that one?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I actually went to the Huntsville Air and Space Museum and did the space camp over there when I was in high school. So that really piqued my interest in working on rockets. And as I started looking online to see what kind of degree programs would get me closest to working on rockets, that's how I came upon aerospace engineering. And the fact that ASU has a specialty in aeronautics or astronautics, it's pretty cool that you can focus on whether or not you want to work on airplanes or launch vehicles. But that's how I narrowed it down. And yeah, it was my first choice. I did kind of just switch back and forth between changing my major, but in terms of starting out my career directly in aerospace engineering, that's why I stuck with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
This is for anyone who wants to answer. How would you value non-engineering work experience or skills?
Okay. Brianna, do you mind starting us off with that one?
Yeah, sure. Again, any kind of skills like communication skills, so even non-engineering works. I know there are some questions about extracurriculars outside of engineering. Just getting out there and working on networking and meeting other people. You never know who you might meet where and what kind of connections that might make. But, just a job outside of engineering, you can learn all those crucial skills of working as a team, working on writing, and just, again, communication is really key, especially in my role right now. So, again, any kind of skills that you can pick up from any other extracurriculars or jobs can really be useful in ways that you might not think of right away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anybody else have something to add to that?
Yeah, I can add that. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, I was just going to say, we definitely value leadership skills. So, leading your team, making sure everyone's working productively together, things like that. And I know you can pick that up in any array of jobs, whether that's at your retail job, engineering job. Those will definitely come with you going forward.
Thank you. Leo?
Yeah, I was, when looking at resumes for people, non-engineering work was very valuable in showing me that people took the initiative to do things other than just school. And if they couldn't get an internship or something, I agree with what was said earlier. If there's a team involved that you could manage or help in a management type structure would be beneficial. But just showing, taking the initiative and doing something while you're going to school says a lot about you. And being able to do that successfully and still making good grades does add value, definitely.
Great. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
How prevalent are promotion development opportunities in the field?
Okay. Ubaldo, do you mind starting us off on this one?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how prevalent are promotion or development opportunities in the field?
Yeah, so I'm currently working at a startup, and there's actually a lot of opportunities for you to involve yourself in various projects. And if you can take on a project and lead it effectively, I think it sets you up on a good path toward a promotion. Though I only have 2 years of experience in the industry. I graduated in 2018, so I can't really speak much to it. I think Leo might be a good one to answer that.
Leo, do you have some insight, please?
Yeah, I just based on my experience, opportunities are always there for those that make it known to management that you are interested in moving up. Don't be afraid to say that you'd like to get to another level, or that you have a goal of getting to a chief engineer position. And a lot of companies actually have tables of job descriptions that can help you on what you need to do to advance at a company. But even if there isn't, as long as you work and be successful and make sure that you communicate to your management, it can happen, and it can happen anywhere. For me, myself, at Hercules, I became the youngest chief technology engineer they had on a program since in the last 25, 30 years that they had been working on new missiles. So, they even let people that didn't have any previous internships and work experience, but still opportunities to get promoted are there if you make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Taylor or Brianna, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with what everyone said. Again, if you work really hard, emphasize that you're looking to move up, and lead everything successfully, yeah, you will have a lot more opportunities to move up within the company quickly. I find that within a startup, there might be more opportunities because you have less people, I guess, to compete with. But you also have a lot more exposure, so it would make sense that you would get to move up as you prove yourself a lot quicker there.
Yeah, and Dave, can I add one other thing too? Is that if you're once you are starting to work, take advantage of giving presentations to management and presenting yourself, because that's when you get noticed, by being able to effectively communicate your accomplishments and what you've done to other people that are outside your normal engineering groups, and that will get you exposed, and that will help.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question, please.
Do you do a lot of joint operations with the military? If so, what kind of operations campaigns?
Was this to anybody in particular?
No, anyone.
Okay. How about Taylor? Would you mind starting us off on that one?
Yeah, I feel like on Northrop Grumman's website, you can see a lot of the programs we have in conjunction with the military. Again, we do a lot of intercept and target vehicles that we use to show the military that if we ever have a threat, coming towards our border, that we can demonstrate we can protect ourselves against that. We have some commercial opportunities, so we can launch satellites into space and also resupply the ISS. So we do work in conjunction with a lot of government programs like the Missile Defense Agency, NASA, Air Force, Marines, any branch as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Brianna?
Yeah, in the aviation industry, Honeywell has a lot of military contracts and government contracts, but with personal experience at my old job at ATK, we were in the Armament Systems Division, so we were working on medium caliber machine guns, and the main program I was working on was with the U.S. Army Armaments Development and Engineering Center, so I worked closely with the government on one of our programs, and I actually had a part of our critical design review, so I presented in front of some people like higher ups in the Army, which is really exciting and nerve-wracking for me. But kind of like Leo was saying, getting that exposure, even though it wasn't within the company, kind of putting myself out there, it really helps a lot. But yeah, there's a lot of government and military contracts in the aerospace industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
What is your best advice for interviewees to get internships?
Okay. Leo, do you mind starting us off on this one?
As far as trying to get an internship, I think the most important thing you need to do is have a good resume and make it only one page. As an example, after 30 plus years of experience, I had my resume down to just slightly over 2 pages. So coming out of school and or still in school, your resume needs to only be 1 page in order to be able to get people's notice, but have other people review it and help you present it. Also too, as far as internships and applying for internships, practice answering questions. Have somebody interview you and practice answering, because not only is your answers important, but how you present yourself and how you're sitting and reacting and interfacing with the person directly in front of you is extremely important to show confidence in yourself. And don't be afraid to tell somebody that you don't know the answer to the question they may be asking. So those are just a couple things that come to mind.
Great. Thank you so much. Taylor, do you have something to add as well?
I do. So I actually attend a lot of the ASU career fairs and do some of the on-campus interviews. The people that really stick out to me when we have, those lines of students coming to learn about our company are the ones that are very articulate and can tell me how their skill sets would be beneficial to our company, why they're interested in working for us. So having researched what we do and what piques their interest so that we can best fit them within a program that would align with their interests, as well as give you something exciting to work on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
So next question, if you can talk a little bit more about your day-to-day life as an engineer. Is it stressful, and is your job, do you feel pressured at your job?
Okay. Ubaldo, do you mind starting us off on this one?
Yeah, sure. So my mornings are pretty typical. Every morning, my team has a morning sync, so we kind of update the team on what we're working on for the day and see if we can collaborate on anything. And then depending on the day, I work on various different projects. As far as feeling pressured, there isn't really any pressure from management or anything. I kind of feel like I pressure myself a little bit to try to get get some progress on some of the projects that I've taken up on. So trying to meet deadlines before the next satellite launch that we're going to be working, or things like that. So overall, I think the work environment for me is pretty relaxed. That's the beauty of working at a startup. You get a lot of perks, but at the same time, there is a lot of hard work to be done.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that perspective. Brianna, do you have some insights as well?
Yeah, sure. As a project engineer, I'm in a lot of meetings. I probably mentioned multiple times already, but it's a lot about leading multifunctional teams, cross-disciplinary. So it's making sure everyone's on the same page, leading those meetings, getting status updates, reporting those statuses to management. We're kind of the middleman between upper management and the individual support groups like design and aerodynamics and testing and things like that. Currently, I'm very stressed because we have 5 different tests going on with only 2 engineers, test engineers supporting. So it's a little crazy right now, especially with the end of the year, everything trying to get done with the year-end budget coming up. But yeah, it can get really stressful at times, but you just have to find ways to deal with it, find little breaks and things that make you happy to relax, and make sure you take those breaks and kind of take yourself out from work. So you don't get burnt out too quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question, please.
Do you think a graduate degree is useful in aerospace? If so, would you recommend getting it right away or waiting several years to get experience in the field?
Leo, do you mind starting us off on this one?
Sure. From what I've seen over the last several years, I think it's more beneficial if you want to get a graduate degree. I think it's better to get it right away than it is to wait. I see more benefit in people being able to get to a full-time job sooner. And now, is it an advantage to have a graduate degree? I'd say it's mixed. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It depends on the field of interest for you and what you want to get into. I've seen benefits in both areas, but haven't seen a huge difference in pay or responsibilities just because somebody has a graduate degree.
Excellent.
That's a master's.
Gotcha.
They're a little different for PhDs. PhDs tend to be more focused on research in companies, and they do get a little higher pay, but that takes a lot longer too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Taylor, do you have other insights on that?
I do. So within my group, I work in, again, the reliability and specialty engineering group, and the people in my group, a lot of them have masters because they work on something so specialized, such as radiation survivability, and that might require a master's or at least some specialized education. So in that case, I do think that a master's would be very beneficial. Within Northrop Grumman, we do not require you to work at the company for a certain amount of years before pursuing a graduate degree. So if you come on, a couple months after graduating and say, I want to go back to school because I think it's going to be beneficial to my job, that is something the company does pay for. And with the current COVID situation, a lot of programs are going online in the evenings. So it's, I think, even easier now to get back into a master's program while in industry than it would have been maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Next question is, how should students build connections or resumes during the pandemic?
Oh boy. Brianna, do you mind starting us on that one?
Yeah, that's a little tough. I know a lot of it is kind of meeting people in person and talking to them face to face, but I guess even through classes it might be tough, but reaching out, making those study groups, doing events. I know a lot of things are virtual, so there are a lot of virtual networking events. So just attending those. Yeah, that's really tough. Sorry, maybe someone else can help answer that one.
Sure. Any other points to add?
I agree with the study groups, and I'm sure there's opportunities to do so virtually. There's also a lot of virtual hiring events happening right now and virtual networking events that you can find on LinkedIn, which I think can also help broaden your network.
Awesome. Thank you. Ubaldo or Leo?
Yeah, I think I would just want to back up what Taylor said. There's a lot of great resources available on LinkedIn. Also a shout out to the Engineering Career Center too. They have a lot of great stuff to help students out.
Yes, indeed. Definitely. Well, we're almost out of time, so I want to give just a quick opportunity for our panelists to give any parting words of wisdom. Leo, do you mind starting us off?
Sure. I'm real excited about seeing more and more aerospace engineers coming into the program, simply because when I started, there were 8 of us total. And so I really encourage people, I'm really happy to see that and proud to know that ASU is getting more people involved. So I wish everybody the best success possible, and don't give up. It's hard, but it's supposed to be hard, because what we do as engineers, aerospace engineers, are very highly technical skilled jobs, and it does pay off, and it can be a heck of a lot of fun. And you can get exposed to a lot of different things and different people in your career, and to me, it's been well worth it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Taylor, parting words of wisdom, please.
I really enjoyed my time at ASU. I think that the degree program is equivalent, if not exceeding, some of the even private institutions that are throughout the country. What I would recommend, I know everyone's in their first year, but there are a lot of companies that are hiring even first-year students, and I would look at internships now. A lot of them are hiring for the spring opportunities already. But otherwise, make sure you have a lot of fun, get to know your peers and your teachers and your TAs. They're going to help you succeed the most throughout your journey at ASU.
Thank you. Brianna?
Yeah, kind of echoing both what Taylor and Leo said. Don't give up, have fun, take a break, make sure you do something you enjoy. Try not to get burnt out too quickly. I know you don't want to take too much on and just really fizzle out. So, find something that you enjoy doing and make sure that you still have some fun while you're at it. But of course, study hard, get good grades, and I'm sure you'll do great.
Thank you. Ubaldo?
Yeah, so I'd say work hard, and by that I mean take good notes, go to as many office hours as you can, ask lots of questions. The professors are there to help you. I'd also say have fun while you're at ASU. There are a ton of great Fulton student orgs. I was a part of a few. I give a special shout out to Dataless, SAE, and SEDS. Another piece of advice I'd give is make as many friends as you can, and relax whenever you can. So yeah, ASU is a great place to be studying aerospace engineering.
Excellent. Thank you so much. On behalf of Fulton Schools of Engineering, I would like to thank the panelists for their time and insight. Students, be sure to take the Career Exploration Night survey, which is on page 3 of your workbook. The recording will be available in a couple days through your ASU 101 course. Please go ahead and log out, everyone, when you're finished. But thank you again, panelists, for all of your time and your insights. Good night.